My first experience with spirits was when I was 3 years old. I was lying between my parents in a bed in a motel room, and I began to feel nervous when I realized they were dozing off and I was still awake. I was staring up at the ceiling when 3 faces appeared. They were round, one green, one red, and one blue. I remember they spoke to me, and their expressions terrified me as much as their words, although I don't remember what they were saying. I woke my mother, and they disappeared. She comforted me and turned over to fall asleep. Soon after, they appeared again. I don't remember anything else, but I know that my parents ended up rushing me to the hospital because I was so terrified. They brought me in screaming, and the doctors had to sedate me. My second experience was when I was 5. My older sister asked me if I would go get her a drink of water late at night. When I returned from the kitchen, I saw a glowing spirit that blocked me from the hallway and standing in front of the stairway. I was terrified of this woman who was staring at me. Later, I saw a photograph of my great-grandmother and realized the entity was her. It looked exactly like her. When I asked my mother her opinion of why my grandma would frighten me in such a way, she told me that perhaps it was to protect me from falling down the stairs. Since then, I've been visited in dreams and no longer fear her, as now she appears young and beautiful and gives me advice. Her last visit with me was at her home, and the last thing she told me to do was take out the garbage. I know this had a powerful meaning, but I don't know how. Third major experience I had was after I had been listening to music. I was 12, and my sister and I shared a room. Our bed was near the doorway and faced it. I was wide awake in the dark, thinking about the day. Suddenly, the moon was dark and the crickets stopped chirping. A tall, dark figure, darker than the pitch dark of the room, stood in the doorway next to my sister. I began to feel as if I was being choked. I gasped for air and tried to wake my sister, but realized I was paralyzed. I couldn't even move my little finger to pinch my sister beside me. In my mind, I prayed to God to save me. I kept saying in my mind, "I rebuke you, Satan, in the name of the Lord." Finally, after what seemed like several minutes, it disappeared, and the moonlight and cricket sounds came back. I was terrified, and tears poured from my eyes as I felt completely unsafe by the boundaries we call reality. The last experience I had was just a few months ago. It was early in the morning, and I was laying in bed when I began to feel a sharp pain in my cheek. The pain kept getting worse, and I tried to brush it off, thinking it would go away. After a while, it began to irritate me so much, I got up and looked in the mirror. I had a 3-inch scratch across my cheek. It was bleeding slightly and fresh, as if it just had happened. Confused, I went back to my bed to see if I could find anything to explain it. I felt my sheets, my pillow, and my fingernails. There was nothing there to explain it. The more I searched and the more I thought about it, the more I realized how impossible it could be. I was alone in the house. When I look at the scar today, it affects me deeply. I don't know how to deal with the physical aspect of what happened, and hope it never happens again to anyone. Needless to say, I have many more stories, including crawling noises, cupboards banging, toilets flushing, an electronic toy monkey whose ears started spinning, but I'm not afraid anymore. I wish I knew why these things would happen, and have spent my life trying to make sense of it all. In the early 1990s, I was about 13. I lived in a very old house in Greenwood, Missouri. It was said to have been built in the late 1800s by a farmer. The layout of the house was very odd. Quite frequently, you could hear strange noises. Boards would creak as if someone were walking. Breezes would sweep by when you had no windows open. Minor strange things, and at the time, I paid little attention to them. One Saturday afternoon, my older sister and I were watching TV. My brother was outside in the backyard. While we were watching the hunt for the Red October, the front door swung open very violently. Startled, my sister and I got up to see what happened. As we approached the door, we heard someone running up the stairs. The stairs were located behind us, and it was an enclosed stairway, so we couldn't see if anyone was there. We slowly approached the bottom of the stairs and started our way up. As we got to the third step, a man shouted from upstairs, "Where is it?" Freaked out, we ran for the back door, through the kitchen. We told my brother, and the three of us went in together. My brother was carrying a baseball bat, and I picked up a kitchen knife on our way back in. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, my brother yelled up, "Get out of here, or we'll call the police." We didn't hear anything. We stood there, literally shaking. After a brief pause, we continued, single file up the stairs. Making it halfway up the stairs slowly, boards creaking under our feet, a man shouted again, "I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you." Following the shouting, we heard someone stomping towards the master bedroom door from the inside of the room. We were so terrified, we dropped everything and just ran out of the house and went to the neighbors. After the police arrived and found no one in the house, the three of us assumed it was a ghost. From that day on, in the house, every time I heard a strange noise or felt that strange breeze, I was taken back to the terror that coursed through my body on that afternoon. I was 11 years old at the time. My family had moved from Kansas to southwest Missouri 2 years before this incident. It was an old house that belonged to my aunt. My two teenage sisters had several experiences with ghosts in the 2 years that we had been there, but I hadn't seen or heard anything until that night. I woke up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason. I was sitting up in bed, wide awake. I don't know why, but I called for my mother. She was a heavy woman, and you could hear her get up and walk in the bedroom where I was. I knew she wouldn't be too happy with me getting her up, so I was trying to think of something to tell her. The room was pitch dark. I could barely see my mother, and she was wearing a white nightgown, but I could hear her. Behind her, a ghost walked in. He was almost snow white, like a thick white cloud, very dense. I couldn't see through him at all. He was almost glowing. The awesome thing about this ghost was that I could see everything about him, even his eyelashes. The clothes he had on looked like khakis, like some kind of worker's uniform, but of course, they were all white. I really can't find the words to describe him. I could see his pocket flaps, the hair on his head short, like it had been buzzed off army style. Little tiny threads sticking from his clothes. Needless to say, I was sitting there with my mouth gaped open, big eyes, not hearing my mother. She finally got loud enough to get my attention. She was saying, "What's wrong with you? What do you want?" I told her I wanted a glass of water. She went into the kitchen, and he followed her. I wasn't really that scared, just in shock, I think. There was 1,000 things going through my mind. After they went into the next room, I looked through the crack in the door, where the hinges are, to see if it was still behind her. He was. I could hear her getting the water, and I figured when she turned around to come back, she would see him. I was waiting for her to scream or something, but she didn't. So, here she comes in the bedroom with a glass of water, with the ghost right behind her. I guess I went into my gaped mouth, big eye thing again. When she finally got my attention, she was saying, "Do you want this or not? What's wrong with you?" I pointed to him and said, "There's a ghost." She said, "Where?" I said, "Behind you." She didn't really look behind her. She looked down, kind of beside her foot, and said, "Oh, there is not." I took the glass of water, and she went back into her bedroom. He was behind her all the way. This ghost had his hands in his pockets. He didn't do anything to scare me. It was like he was just hanging around, bored, nothing else better to do. I didn't mention that he was tall and thin, and he had boots on, all white of course, and this whole time, he never even looked at me, never even looked my direction, until he was going back out the door, following my mother, and when he was in the doorway, Just before he went through it, he turned completely around and looked me right in the eye, and he said, "I know you can see me." That's when my heart leaped into my throat. It really felt like it. I never seen him again, but I've got a lot of other ghost stories. That was 37 years ago, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. When I got older, I thought about it a lot, and it seems like he was not looking my direction and acting nonchalant so that I wouldn't be afraid. Oh, how I wish I could describe those white eyeballs. I swear this is true. I've told a few people about it. I don't know if they believe me or not. Don't really care either. I've been reading these stories for about a year now, and finally decided to write about mine. I've told some people about this, but I could tell nobody thought anything about it, and they all changed the subject rather quickly. I don't know what you would call this experience, but I know it wasn't a dream. In early 1990, I was engaged to the love of my life, Billy. We were crazy about each other. We had just moved to a new town, and Billy made a new friend, whom I hated. I always felt bad things when this friend was around. I worked nights, and Billy worked days, so I knew they were hanging out at night when I wasn't around. This is where my nightmare began. I returned home one hot summer night from work, and Billy wasn't home. His wallet was still on the table, which was weird. After about an hour, I started growing angry because I just knew he was out with his friend cruising around, and I couldn't believe he hadn't even called me yet. He knew what time I came home from work, and his friend just got a new Camaro. Well, I fell asleep finally and woke up at about 5:30 in the morning, and Billy still wasn't home. I began to worry like crazy and felt like I needed to turn on the TV. For some reason, as soon as I did, I saw a terrible crash on the news that had happened the night before, and all that was recognizable were the rims on the car. I recognized them immediately. They were asking for help to identify the passenger, whom had no identification. Well, needless to say, my love was killed when his friend did a U-turn on the freeway, right in front of a big rig. For the next 2 weeks, I kept having these horrible nightmares where I was sitting in the passenger seat and watching the semi-truck smack into me. I would wake up crying hard and could even smell the wreck. This dream happened every night. I felt so sad and tired and confused. I didn't want to go on anymore. Then after finally falling asleep, I had this incredible dream. I was at a barbecue with all of Billy and my friends from our hometown. It was in a backyard, and all of the colors were so bright and vivid, I can't even describe them. Everyone was having the best time, and someone told me that Billy was there, but he was on the other side of the fence. I climbed to the top of the fence to look over, and there stood Billy. He looked like he was lit up from the inside out, with bright colors, and he was smiling. He began to speak to me, and told me that he would not come over the fence and join the party, and that I couldn't come to his side of the fence, but everything was okay, and he would see me again. He said he was in an accident, and he was disappointed at his friend for being drunk, and he wanted to come home when his friend just turned into traffic. He also told me it didn't hurt, and they loved me very much, and that I would be okay from now on. Suddenly, I woke up and felt a peace that only God could give someone. My heart was filled with a happiness I've never felt before or since. I never again had that nightmare I was having. I still don't believe it was a dream, as I remember every detail and color I saw, and it felt so real. Also, if it was a dream, why did I wake with such peace in my body from head to toes? My son Jason had a very strange experience when he was 3 years old. This day I was in my bedroom, sitting at the head of the bed, folding some clothes. Jason came into the room and wanted to play. He loved to roughhouse in the bed, so we started to play. Right in the middle of me pushing him over on his back, he said, "Mommy, what's that?" He was pointing to the bedroom door and said that an animal had just come into the room. He followed the animal with his finger as it moved along the foot of the bed and then down the side and under the bed. He said it went under the bed. He got off the bed and looked, but said that it wasn't there. To begin with, Jason didn't make up things or have an imaginary playmate or that sort of thing. I knew he'd seen something because of the circumstances of him seeing it, how he stopped in mid-playing to point at what he saw. I told him to come to me, and I sat him on my lap and started asking him questions about what he'd seen. He said that it was a tall black animal with ears that stood up like a dog. When I asked how tall it was, he said, like Daddy, which would be 5'11". At the time, we had a black short-haired dog we called Mouse. He said that this animal was walking on its back feet while holding its front feet up at chest level with the paws hanging down. He said that I looked at him the whole time I was walking around the bed. I asked about the eyes, and he said they looked like dog eyes. Years later in middle school, one of Jason's classes was studying Egypt. Jason came home from school and told me, I can finally show you what the animal I saw looked like. He opened a textbook and showed me a picture of the Egyptian god Anubis. I've always thought it was such a weird thing for a small child to see something so strange. He is 21 years old now and still remembers the experience very vividly. If anyone here at the site could shed some light on this, Jason and I would be most grateful. I have a cousin Amber, whose father died when she was in the 3rd grade. Shortly after his death, we and 2 other young friends went to her grandmother's farmhouse. We were sitting on a gas well on a hill next to her farmhouse. Farther up the hill, there was a tree line. We were all just talking when suddenly, Amanda, one of our friends, and I looked up the hill to the tree line. Ashley, Amanda, how are you guys doing today? Asked a man dressed in orange hunting garb. We did a classic movie double take at each other and tried screaming back up the hill to the man. He was gone. The other 2 girls asked why we were screaming. At who? They didn't see the man. They didn't hear the man. We later learned that hunting season wasn't in. We also learned that Amber's father had been to her grandmother's house after hunting to get some Tylenol because he wasn't feeling good, less than a week before he was found dead from a heart attack in his mechanic's garage. That was nearly a decade ago, and I still can't say for sure if that was her father checking up on us or not. How could anyone else know it was from such a distance? All I can say is that I'm not the only one who saw it and heard it. Amanda, to this day, still doesn't talk about it because it makes her so uncomfortable. One night, while lying in bed, I was softly singing The Heart Will Go On from Titanic, which had been the last song to play on the radio before I turned it off. I was also thinking of my friend Robert, whose name was changed for the story, who had been tragically killed years before in a hit-and-run accident. Reaching a very poignant part of the song, which made my heart long to see Robert's face again, I started to cry. Out of the darkness, very cold hands touched my arm, stroking it in a comforting manner. I kept my eyes closed, and to this very day, I don't understand why I didn't panic, scream, or even move in any way. I just kept softly singing. Those cold hands were then touching my hair. I could feel fingers running through my hair and occasionally touching my face. After I finished the song, I felt something very cold pressing against my forehead, which felt remarkably like lips. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard a soft voice whisper, "I'm here. I'm always here." I promptly fell asleep and dreamt of Robert throughout the night. To this day, I believe that it was him coming to let me know that he is still with me and he knows that I still love him. My dad's ex-wife's maiden name is Colson. My dad is pretty much good friends with most of the Colson family. Recently, my older half-sister had a child, so of course, my dad's ex-wife was in there to be here for the birth, etc. I had the chance to talk to her, and she shared some stories with me from the Colson farmhouse. It's a house that has been owned by the Colson family for about 100 years or so, maybe even more. It's just been passed down. She told me of the story when she was a kid, living near the house. She wasn't allowed in the house, but she wanted to show it to one of her friends. So one day they went in there. They were upstairs when they heard the kitchen door slam. Then they heard men's footsteps downstairs. Immediately, she thought, oh no, it's Granddad. He'll kill me. There was 2 staircases in the house, one at each end. So, she and her friend decided to wait and see which stairs her grandfather would take, and they would take the opposite down. The man's footsteps stopped. They didn't come up the stairs, so they went on downstairs, and there was no one there. The kitchen door was locked, just as they had left it. The Colson family was good friends with a man named Roy. Roy was a repairman and could fix anything or make anything. He was a very big man and was known to be very tough. He wasn't scared of snakes or anything. He had been in the crawl space under the house once, and a copperhead fell on him, and he killed it with his bare hands right there. Anyways, the family hired him to do something to the house this one time, and it required him to go under the house and work on some wires. He was crawling along, and then all of a sudden, there's a woman's voice right in front of his that says Roy. He crawled out of that thing as fast as he possibly could, and he hasn't gone back in since. Now, he won't even go into the house without someone with him, because he has heard voices, and at one point, he heard footsteps, and they kept getting closer, and he finally felt someone just brush past him, and the footsteps just kept going, but he never saw anyone. There's only 3 or 4 people that have been in the house that hasn't seen or heard anything. I've never been in it, but I think it would be incredibly awesome to go into it. Thanks for reading. Hey guys, it's Phantomofdarkness here, and I just wanted to state something serious before I move on to the silliness that you guys are accustomed to. So, basically, YouTube has changed their algorithm to show more, videos that are older, I guess, and the more recent videos, like the ones that just come out, they're not going to get notifications, and people are not going to get notifications when these videos release. So some of you may be getting them, some of you may not. So why don't we just take this opportunity to make sure this video gets out to anybody you can. And if you have a Facebook, if you have a Twitter, go ahead and share this video, just because I want to make sure that everything runs smoothly and everybody gets to the video in time. Of course, you can follow me on Instagram, Phantomofdarkness, it's Darknet, and Instagram, of course, Phantomofdarkness 2016, to avoid that issue maybe entirely. But for the most part, I'd appreciate it if you guys, go ahead and, share the video anywhere you can. Like it, comment below as usual, and let's just get this started. Anyway, guys, now the silliness can commence. So I was walking down the street, and I saw a little apple in my eye. I took it out of my eye, and I danced with it till the moonlight hit. It was amazing, guys. I had a romantic encounter with an apple, and I loved it so much. I loved it like my own brother. I don't know what that means. Okay, guys, I honestly don't understand why you guys think that is so funny when I just randomly spew things, but I mean, actually I do know why it's funny, because it's just so random. And whenever someone else says something random, like weird, I'm just like, oh, wow, that's funny. So, I understand. Why am I so weird? Anyway, guys, I love you guys so much. Like I said, be sure to comment. These stories were actually really good. There were a lot of entertaining stories in here, and I think, when you think about the stories in general, I think they really mesh well with, the whole video that I'm trying to do right now. So go ahead, comment, let me know how you're doing, let me know what you think of these stories, and if you are here to stay forever. Hopefully you are. But anyway, guys, comment, like, share, and I already said that, I think. Anyway, I'll just leave now before I just, ruin myself even more. I have a headache. Love you guys. I was about to say comment, like, share again. What is wrong with me? Anyway, guys, bye-bye.